Aidan Connolly, you're very welcome to Tureencahill, and
we're
delighted to have you as part of the Tureencahill Summer School. You've very strong family ties in Slieve Lucra, and I suppose getting more particular in the Guinea area. Many of the listeners will be familiar with your uncle, Cronin, who's a fantastic local Slieve Lucra musician. So, I suppose to start off, it's only, I suppose, fair that we start with the question, how were you first introduced to Slieve Lucra music? Would it have been through your family ties to the area?
Yeah, I'd say so. Brian, thanks for the invitation. Great to be here.
We're delighted to have
summer's evening. So I suppose, my mother is Aidan Moynihan. She's a really good tin whistle player. So I suppose when I was small, I would have heard my mum playing a little bit. But there was an old turntable, long since disappeared. But anyway, we had the Star of the Gaultier, actually the LP, which was retro even at that time, and I used to be playing that quite often when I was around 4 or 5 years of age. And then I would have obviously met my Uncle Con occasionally, because I was in Dublin, down here in Kerry. So I suppose between my mother, the occasional visits with Con, the album, the Star of the Gaultier album, and then later going to cultist classes, I suppose, to actually mechanically play the fiddle would have been my start,
Brilliant.
I kick off with 3 reels. The first 2 associated with Jackie Daly. The fly fishing reel, which I believe is Jackie's composition. The second one I heard on, it's in the handed down archive actually, it's a recording from the 80s of Jackie Daly playing with Connie O'Connell, Matt Cranich, and it's a sort of a session recording. And then the last one is Donald Frumpa, which I got from Dennis Murphy recording, so I'll try these.
Brilliant. And so I suppose so many musicians mentioned that album, the start of the Garter. When you were listening to it first, I suppose, what were the moments in the album that really stood out to you? Because I know that as a fiddle player you would pick up on things that many others probably wouldn't. What were the delicacies, or was there things that immediately kind of drew you to that music?
Yeah, and like I suppose I would have gone back to it many times since. I suppose initially the warmth of the sound, because it is slightly south of D, you know, it's tuned a bit lower, and it's just really, really welcoming, warm sound, particularly with the crackly kind of LP. And then they do the octave playing is just fabulous. Actually, track 1 is my favourite track on it, the Ratawan, Hair in the Corn, and then particularly the second tune, it goes into G, the warmth and the low octave, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. I suppose, and I suppose again, it's important to mention those musicians, Dennis Murphy and Judah Clifford, who came from Lachine.
2 tunes then from the John Murphy tape, which is in the handed down archive. First one is the Kilcummin Lass, not sure the name of the second one, and then I'll play a Connie O'Connell tune, actually third. It's called The Man from the Island. So 3 polkas.
And I know then as well, you were lucky enough to meet and play with Paddy Cronin, who I know that you're from speaking in the past year with your uncle Con, that Paddy was another strong influence in his music as well. So with Paddy's music then, I think it's fair to say there was probably a contrast maybe in styles between the likes of Dennis Murphy and Julie's fiddle style to Paddy's, because I suppose Paddy immigrated. And did you hear that kind of, you probably still heard the Steve Lucre touch coming in, but was it slightly different? Was there different elements of his fiddle coming through in his fiddle playing?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. I'd say, like, I suppose when I met Paddy when I was a child, probably not really observant enough on fiddle styles or anything, and at that time, like, and then I suppose my uncle Con actually copied me the 2 albums. They're not available even still on CD, like the Kerry's Own and Rakish Paddy. He burnt them for me. and I just learned all the tracks. And because Con played all the tunes, then it was sort of a motivation to learn them and then to have them speak with Con. So I suppose that's my first interaction, was just repertoire. But I suppose you kind of, particularly at that age, it's osmosis as well. You are kind of absorbing not just repertoire, also like, you know, the phrasing and ornamentation, lots of stuff like that. And then I suppose over the years digging a little bit more, and more stuff with Paddy seems to resurface all the time. Like he was heavily influenced by his environment in the States, you know, and all the great musicians from all over Ireland and other styles of music as well that would have shaped his music. So, but he was a Rolls Royce player. He had all the lovely graces and touches that's in the music here, and he's able to back flip over strings, and just really nice and delicate. That softened up, we'll say, some of the other music styles that might necessarily be as subtle, particularly bowing wise. I'll try a set of jigs. The Rambler is the name that James Morrison had on this tune, the great Sligo fiddle player. I heard Dennis Murphy playing a version of it down a key in G with a slightly different twist, so I'll try that one. Then Dan Leary version of it's Off to California as a jig, and this recording's in the archive, and Dan mentions that he got it off Tom Billy, so it's I suppose I'd call it Off to California as a jig, but it might have another name. And then another one, Maura O'Keefe did an interview with Willie O'Connell, and he plays this jig on it, so I'll just call it Willie O'Connell's for now. So I'll try these three.
And I think it's important as well to mention that your grandfather, Paddy Moynihan, came from the village in Guineaguilla and would have been a regular musician at the famous dance hall in the village, Tady Willie's dance hall, where he would have played with the likes of Dennis Murphy and my own grandfather, Johnny O'Leary. And I think there's one snippet of a recording of the three of them up on stage together that Seamus Innes recorded way back in the 40s. But would you have kind of listened much to his playing, or would there have been many recordings of your grandfather available to you when you were growing up?
No, it's a shame. Now, about 10 years ago, Con found a tape. It was funny actually, because there's only 4 tracks left of Paddy actually playing, because I think Con subsequently, I don't think tapes that I think people used to record over them then again, so there was something that was recorded over, but I have 4 tracks from them.
4 tracks.
2 polkas, a slide, and a Cameronian reel is all I have.
Oh,
it's about 8 minutes of audio, which is lovely to have.
Yeah, lovely to have. Yeah, because I think it's a part. Because I think at that time there was so many. We were talking about it off camera. The amount of musicians that were around this area at that time, and they were all. That was the hub, I suppose, for many years, Tady Willie's Dance Hall, and I just think it's nice to mention that, because he was a regular performer there in that dance hall. So the music was coming through in the Moynihan side of your family. So, and what about then on your dad's side? Was there music in that side of your family as well?
Not a whole pile that I ever encountered, but my great grandfather, and it was my father's from Mayo, on that side, was a fiddle player and was apparently recorded by the Radio Éireann in the late 40s, I believe. The track is gone. So like the memory kind of stops there. There wasn't, like, my grandmother is still around thankfully, but I think she was quite young when he stopped playing. So I think it's kind of there wasn't really much of a connection. Yeah. Okay.
But we're delighted so to claim that your musical genius is coming from Guineaguilla. we can claim you.
Unfortunately, during the pandemic, we lost Paddy Jones, who's a legendary fiddle player. So I'm going to just play a slow air that I learned from Paddy as a tribute. It's called Layla. It's composed by Scottish fiddle player Ian Powery. So play that one.
So then I suppose to talk about, I know you've made some beautiful recordings. Your first solo album, tell us a bit about that. You recorded that a couple of years back with Jack Telty, I think.
That's right, yeah, Brian, that was 2016 actually, the years are flying. It's called Be Off, and it was sort of a mixture album, like there's 8 of the tracks are with friends of mine.
Mm-hmm.
There's Lee McGonigal on box, Andrea Palandri on fiddle, and there's many others on it, including my uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And then 8 of the tracks are kind of solos, I suppose, with accompaniment. So it's sort of a blended sort of an album.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that was that. And then there was an album 2019 with John Daly called Away and Up the Road as well, which is 2 fiddles and piano.
Fantastic album. And he again included some local music on that album, yourself and John. Of course, John has also strong links to the area.
Oh, he does, yeah.
With Tureencahill. But you have a new one then coming out, which I think it's important to mention. You're hoping to have it out maybe in the coming months ahead at some stage. Can you tell us a bit about your thinking behind this album, and if there's kind of, were you coming at it with a different kind of angle, different perspective to your first solo album, or even with music-wise, did the idea come to you due to the fact that you had come across some new music that you were anxious to record?
I suppose the first album, I suppose, was sort of, having played for so many years, you have sort of a backlog of stuff. It's like, what did I do with it? And you do that.
Yeah.
The second album was kind of just an organic mix. Myself and John played very well together, and really enjoy it. I've learned an awful lot from him, and it was just like we're both in a position to, why don't we do it?
Yeah.
And then I suppose the COVID pandemic, which hopefully we're coming towards the end of at the moment, just all of a sudden you've all this time, just empty days, empty days, and it's great then to have the music in these times, So I went at it. I had been living in Spain as well. I hope to get back. So I have encountered a lot of music from over there, which I love as well. So I suppose even having been exposed to the Spanish music and engaged with that, your kind of head is opened, and then stuff from elsewhere, then again other countries would then come in. And also John Daly sent me on a lot of Cape Breton fiddle music, which is fantastic stuff as well. So I suppose the last year or two, particularly during the pandemic, there's been an awful lot of new stimulus. And then I suppose just playing an awful lot. Again, well, I'm in a position to do it. I have the time. I will do it. And then for Jack Talty is brilliant to work with in Relic Records. Everything is just so easy.
Yeah.
And I got this bow actually. There's a fiddle player in Portland, Maine, called Kevin McElroy. And anyway, we were over, myself and John, doing a few concerts, and he had this bow, which he gave it to me, and it's a beautiful bow, and it's really made a big difference to my playing.
Oh, brilliant!
The new album's actually called The Portland Bow.
Oh, brilliant!
It's sort of a thank you to him,
Absolutely.
So it's mostly Irish music, and there's 3 Steve Lukather tracks on it. I think there is. There's one of them is an air, a tribute to Paddy Jones.
Oh, brilliant!
And then there's a set of polkas, set of sides, and there's 2 Spanish tracks as well.
Oh, fantastic! There's a lovely, healthy mix. So
representative of what I'm sort of at.
Yeah. It's lovely to pay tribute to Paddy Jones, because I know he was another, actually, speaking of local musicians, I remember even seeing you play a bit with Paddy.
It's a privilege. Yeah.
Lovely musician, and no better way to pay tribute to him than by playing a slow air, because he was great at playing slow airs himself. He was really great. Well, the big thing is, be sure to keep us posted on any upcoming news with the album, and we'll be sure to give it a plug for you, because I know there'd be a lot of local interest. So I'd like to thank you so much for coming down and make it your business to feature in the summer school, and we're just delighted to have you. So all the best with the album, Aidan, and hopefully you'll be here again in the coming years ahead.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
Thanks for the invitation. Thanks.
chanced with the variation at the very end.
I worked out.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
worked.
yeah.
Great.